Okay. You didn't have to I knew. Nothing new. All right. He's fine. He just has a stomach ache.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'll just leave that in. I mean, I'll cut it out, but I won't. I don't got to start it over. Welcome to Everyone's a Critic movie review podcast. I'm your co-host, Bob Zerl.
I get people off. I look for the one guy who isn't getting off, and I make him get off.
With me, as always, is professional film critic Sean Patrick.
I am the smart. I am the smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
And Josh Adams.
You're that sweaty carpenter who hates me.
Visit us at IHateCritics.net, everyone'sacriticpodcast.com. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Our handle is CriticsPod. There you can watch the trailers, read Sean's reviews, listen to the podcast, and any other interactions. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher. Subscribe to the show, rate and review the show. We will read your reviews on the air. I'm not sure if I get reviews outside of Apple, so if you do review us elsewhere, let us know, and I'll go look for it. I don't know how that works. Somebody emails me most of the reviews once a month. And then Patreon. IHateCritics.net/Patreon is the best way to help support the podcast. And we also have a PayPal link there. And if you want podcast merch, go to IHateCritics.net and click on the podcast merch tab and get whatever you want and take pictures, and we'll share them on our social media. This week, we'll start with I don't know. You go ahead, Josh.
Is it because I'll introduce it with a slight bit more enthusiasm? Even though you're good at faking it? Is that why you want me to lead? Yeah. Okay, so Star Wars Celebration 2019 is happening this past week, towards the tail end of the week and through the weekend, which of course means that we have a panel for the next film, Episode 9, a title.
The Saturation of Skywalker.
A title and a trailer. And right before Episode 9 panel happened, Mark Hamill was quoted as saying, hey, maybe Star Wars fatigue is a real thing. And okay, so you have Luke Skywalker acknowledging again that perhaps all is not well in what's the place where Casey is at the bat? All is not well in Mudville? Okay. It's the title of the movie is called The Rise of Skywalker. Okay. I don't think it's a very good title, but it doesn't really matter anymore. I just care what the movie looks like. And of the very, very little that we got in this teaser trailer that they showed, I did enjoy the visuals that I saw. I guess that's all that I can ask for a teaser trailer. I'm not going to go crazy about it, but I do have a bunch of theories that don't matter.
I want to. What are your theories?
Oh, well, the good thing is this trailer does nothing to make me think different that we're going to see the origins of the Force in this next film, or at least point to the origins of the Force, which is what the Clone Wars series that no one has seen. They alluded to in a nice big arc. And I've maintained that is really the focus of what the entire Skywalker saga is. And so the pieces are being moved around, and I think that we'll see some of that. I can't encourage anyone to watch the Clone Wars because you're not going to listen to me.
So Rey is a Skywalker.
I don't think that she is a Skywalker.
I'm pretty sure.
And then that's been well theorized, of course. And I don't care if I'm wrong either. That's the good thing. And poor Bob he's crying blood at this point. What'd you think?
I didn't watch it.
Of course.
No, I had it on, but I was watching Almost Famous, so it was kind of muted. I don't really know what they said or any voices or whatever happened.
Well, there's a big reveal then.
Emperor Palpatine is back.
I don't even know who that is. And I've seen the movie.
That's awesome. He's the shrouded guy with wrinkly face who shoots lightning out of his fingers.
I thought Darth Vader was that guy.
You're not wrong, okay? Vader's the pawn. He's W, No, not really. But you get to see
he's all cute and cuddly now, Bush, so I mean, yeah, it kind of makes sense. He's kind of cute and cuddly at the end.
There you go.
As a Force ghost.
I think it's really... I'll try not to think about any of those things that you just said. But I think it's really cool that we do get to see what looks like the crashed Death Star in the trailer. Now, it could be one of many different things, but let's say if it's the first Death Star that exploded and fragments went everywhere, okay, then this stuff is in the planet Yavin 4 or something close to it where that first battle took place. If it's the second Death Star, then it's on the forest moon of Endor with the Ewoks, and we get Ewoks again. No! Some of us don't care about the Ewoks. But, you know what? I watched the 2 Ewok movies within the past few weeks, and it's so bad that I'm starting to feel what you're saying now.
So is Mark Hamill not in this?
He is in it. His voice is in the trailer as well.
But he's annoyed with the... what was he bad-mouthing there?
I don't think that he was per se... No, we know what his feelings were about The Last Jedi because he made those very vocal. He just stated that he thought that it was possible that we are going through a bit of a Star Wars withdrawal or...
not withdrawal.
Oversaturation. Yeah, that's what I'm... For me, it's the withdrawal of good feelings. Like... There's not as much positivity as there was. And even between the prequels, people are like, boy, that one sucked, didn't it? Right? Okay, after like the 10th time of seeing it. Well, some of us got there quicker, I'm sure. But then it kind of became obvious, like, oh, man, that wasn't very good on the whole, was it? But there was some renewed excitement with this. It's in kind of a bad place. So maybe he's right.
I mean, I liked the last 2 movies. So I don't know.
So did I.
I don't know where that negativity comes from.
It is the number of groups that I belong to that discuss Star Wars. It's 50-50, really, right down the middle. People that really get upset about what they try to do with casting in these new movies and making certain people heroes, they say because they had to. The angles, the bullshit things that people say. I'm obviously on the other side that enjoys seeing a different direction.
It's like Mumford and Sons. Everybody, like the small amount of people who really love those initial records are actually very large, but then they try to expand out to a wider audience with the last record, and now all their original fans hate them.
Oh, they have new stuff? Does that disqualify me forever?
That's like the perfect comparison because I don't like them at all. And I don't like Star Wars at all. So it works out nice. But basically, they're going back to fan servicing with this, and I'm assuming that's the...
Even George was consulted. And, I mean, of all of the characters that they leave out of this particular teaser, Lando's in there for fan service. I'm sure that his part is very minimal. It could be important, but I would imagine it's minimal.
Did you see the meme going around where it's Donald Glover talking to young Solo? What the act? I can't remember.
Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, he's talking to him. He's talking about getting his ship back, and he says, "Over my dead body." And then it cuts to the picture of Lando and the ship.
I did see that one.
Great.
It's well done. Okay, Bob, let's resuscitate you. A 1 and a 2 and a 3.
All right, Metallica news.
Does Metallica news?
Yeah. Just thought I'd wake you up a little bit.
It didn't work. We'll get there. We got half the show to do first, and then we'll get to the fun stuff. A little.
Oh man, what a piece of garbage this is. And this is director is Tina Gordon, who's not a bad director, but this is a really terrible movie. This is Regina Hall plays a woman who's a nasty, kind of bullying CEO of a company that makes apps, I think, maybe, because it's so vague and stupid that it's kind of hard to tell what they do. They think of apps to sell to other people. I don't know what the fuck they do. It's so dumb. But she's got an assistant played by Issa Rae who's put upon and bullied by her boss, and then you got this little kid who's in the office with her dad. He's a donut delivery guy, and she just happens to be there. And the boss lady bullies the little kid, so the little kid waves her magic wand at the lady and says, "I wish you were little so I could bully you back." The boss wakes up the next morning, Regina Hall wakes up the next morning as a little girl. And it's her little self from school. And she was in school. She was bullied and made fun of, and it wasn't a good time for her. And now she's going to have to go back to school through a series of really terrible, not well thought of, convoluted ideas. The way they force these characters into the positions that they want them to be in is so, I mean, it's just the lack of detail. It's just careless. It's just careless and sloppy and really, really irritating and terribly, terribly unfunny. And it wastes a lot of really good people. Regina Hall and Issa Rae are way too good for this material. It's so... I mean, I guess I can't even begin to just talk about how sloppy it all is. There's no attention to detail whatsoever. They're just slapping these little pieces of plot together to get to the gags that they want to do, and the gags that they want to do aren't very good. And on top of that, they're a little bit creepy, the way that they sexualize this 12-year-old version of her. And I know she's an adult in a child's body, but still, it's creepy and weird to do it. She still looks like a 12-year-old. I don't care if she has the mind of an adult. It's creepy and weird. And it's never funny. The joke never gets funny, no matter how many times they try it. She's supposed to go on this journey of learning something about herself and learning about being a nicer person, and I guess she kind of does, but it's so poorly managed that Regina Hall doesn't seem to, when we get to that point, we don't seem to actually sense the growth within her all that much. A couple of little lines of dialogue, but really she's still scowling and nasty in many ways, and it's kind of bizarre. That's a bizarre choice to give her as an actress. This movie isn't funny, it's not compelling, and it wastes a lot of really cool people in a really terrible movie.
So, no. That's a good one, though. I was thinking, though, that this would be yet another iteration of Big, with Shazam just a week apart from this. Does it share any similarities with that? Like you're saying waves a wand at her, so there's in theory some kind of supernatural
it's more
element
Freaky
to it.
Friday, isn't it?
No, because it's not body
they didn't
switching.
switch. Yeah, they went the other way.
It is more. It's like basically the 12-year-old girl that I mentioned. She's on Blackish. She's becoming a very popular actress, but she actually came up with this idea too. Interestingly enough, she thought of the idea watching Big about what it would be like to switch the genders and switch it the other way around, have a big person become little, and hence the name Little. And so she pitched that idea, had somebody else write it, obviously, and put it all together. And
it's making money. The audience seems to like it. 80% on Rotten Tomatoes. Critics are only 50%, so it's rotten, but they seem to have split on the.
It's definitely not like an actual stated sequel or remake of Big.
No, it's just inspired by really.
Because the Taraji P. Henson movie, What Men Want, from a month or so ago, I was thinking of that and how they called it a remake. Yeah.
Wait, is Taraji P. Henson having that bad a year? My God.
Some of her other Empire co-stars are having a way worse year.
Well, they got away with it, though.
True.
Hellboy.
Hellboy, boy, yeah, this week of awful continues with Hellboy. Hellboy, of course, the third attempt at a Hellboy movie. The first two, I guess, people like them. I don't necessarily care either way about them. I never really had any special feelings about it. I think obviously Guillermo del Toro's a legend, but those two movies were they're very much on the lower end of his work. This time, it's Neil Marshall from The Descent directing this movie, and that is a real disappointment. But thankfully, there was behind-the-scenes tension, so I can explain this. why this really talented director has made a very awful movie. Basically, he was butting heads with the executives from beginning to end. He had a vision for what he wanted to do. They had a more compromised version, and what we get is this compromised version. We get the Hellboy basically joining the story where he's going down to Mexico to look for a friend of his who's gone missing in the world of Lucha Libre. And this is a pretty clever way to start a movie. You've got Hellboy, you've got Lucha Libre wrestling. This is interesting, right? They waste it. Just completely wasted. That's over with and very quickly, and it's not very interesting. His friend turns into a demon and tells him that the world is going to end. We find out in a prologue that there's this woman called the Blood Queen, played by Mila Jovovich, who, I mean, did anybody know that Mila Jovovich was in this movie?
No, not until
I just figured
Why
she
would
didn't
you-
make movies anymore unless Resident Evil was attached to it.
I mean, regardless of what you feel about Mila Jovovich, why would you not mention that she's in the movie? She's a freaking star. She's a bigger star than David Harbour is.
Yeah.
And you don't even mention that she's in the fucking movie. And she's the main villain. She's killed in the beginning by King Arthur. Her body is dismembered, her head and all that are placed into boxes and taken all across the world to be hidden. But, of course, they're going to come back together because she's going to be there at the end for the big battle. Hellboy is supposed to become her king, essentially, and she's the Blood Queen. She's going to bring monsters out of the shadows. And the conflict, essentially, is going to be whether or not Hellboy believes that monsters should be able to live out in the world, or should they be back in the shadows away from humans and not killing everyone. Which side is he going to take? I don't know. It's not a very good conflict because it's not very well stacked up. David Harbour's fine. He's doing all he can. It's not a very good role for anybody because it's very underwritten. His conflicts aren't very strong. We kind of know that he's going to side with humanity. He's the good guy. Then there's the R-rated. That's really instead of being Mila Jovovich as the second lead, the R rating is the second lead because they basically jammed all this R-rated garbage into this and tried to force something to be R-rated that doesn't necessarily need it. So there's a lot of really unnecessary CGI blood and guts that, I mean, they're rubbery, they're ugly looking, and they're like the meanderings of a 13-year-old in his notebook. What if the giant monster had like knives for feet and he stabbed people as he walked? Fuck you. You can go back in your closet. No, stop.
But if you're going to go rated R, why are you, as a studio head or whatever, whoever was fighting with Neil Marshall, why are you having that fight
That
on
is
a rated R
a
movie?
great question. I have no
PG-13,
idea.
fine, but
Why did you hire the director of The Descent if you're going to sit there and argue with him all day? I don't know. They wanted him to make Deadpool. That's what they want. They want to make Deadpool. They want Hellboy to be Deadpool, and Hellboy is not Deadpool. It just doesn't work. The character doesn't fit that archetype, and you've got executives, I think, asking for Deadpool, and you've got a director who's trying to give you Hellboy.
yeah, it's 15% on Rotten Tomatoes, while the other two were like 80 in the mid 80s from critics.
Mm-hmm. I can't let Neil Marshall off the hook entirely. There's a lot of clumsiness to this. Even if you are fighting with your executives, there's a lot of clumsy CGI. There's a lot of really bad, predictable story choices that you can see a mile away. The arc is incredibly predictable, and that's stuff he could have seen along the way.
Well, but the arc in the story would be stuff he's fighting with the studio
Probably.
on. So that's probably out of his control. But clumsiness, that's something else. But really, outside of The Descent, I mean, has he done a lot of...
No, I mean, Doomsday was the same thing. Like, he had a grand idea, and then ended up, they wanted him to make a Mad Max movie with a woman. That's basically how that turned out.
Then George Miller actually did that. Very, very well.
Yeah, he's done really not much since then. The Descent is his only really great movie. But it is at least one really great movie, though.
It's a shame.
Yeah.
After?
Oh boy, wait till I tell you about After. Are you ready? Prepare yourselves. So guess where this comes from? It's based on a novel, but the novel is based off of fan fiction. And it's fan fiction about Harry Styles from One Direction. So this girl had the idea of what would it be like if I went to college with Harry and the One Direction guys. So like One Direction guys are all his friends, and then I'm with Harry, and Harry is this construct of what I think Harry would be like. And that's what this is. She's some girl's fantasy about dating Harry Styles in college, who she thinks Harry Styles is. Oh, wow. Just the series of really... wonderfully cheesy touches here are just beautiful. Like, you've got all these millennial hot takes on like Jane Austen and Wuthering Heights, and oh man, just when a character in a movie says the name of a famous author just to sound smart, Yeah, that's this movie all over the place. So why is this called After? Well, it's called After because, you see, she had life before she met Hardin, and then after. You see, yeah, it's the cleverness of the title that gets you. This is so terrible in every way. I mean, just the romantic cliches here, just everything feels like just and terribly emo and 90s, and just everything is this dour, grand tragedy. At one point she says, "There's nothing you could do to make me love you any less." And then smash cut to the things that makes her love him less.
So they took One Direction and put him in the 90s? Or what's... I'm confused.
It's a 90s style, like, romantic drama. So all that grand, tragic, emo stuff.
So instead of One Direction, it's like Sunny Day Real Estate or something like that.
Exactly. Okay. All the music sounds the same. It's all that emo music. It's really terrible.
I just know we have a listener who's a big emo guy. So.
This is not good emo. This is really terrible. Awful.
What's the difference? Josh is kind of emo.
I was going to say, where do I slot into this conversation? Be prepared.
This is Kmart brand emo, I would say. Like, it all sounds exactly the same. It's all the same beat. This romance is so incredibly one note. He broods like he's a vampire from Twilight who doesn't have teeth. He's just constantly sad and angry because his dad was an alcoholic, but his dad's also the head of the college, and his dad was always at the pub growing up, but his dad is also an American played by Peter Gallagher, so how that makes sense, I don't know. Logically just doesn't, I don't know.
So is it better or worse than 50 Shades of Grey, which is another fan fiction-based novel?
It's worse. It's much worse,
Really?
I would say. I would rather... Well, I mean, I got Dakota Johnson, at least something to enjoy in
That's
that
true.
movie.
But I mean, if you want to...
She's a wonderful actress.
As the backstory, though, it's almost as pathetic.
Yeah. It is so pathetic, too. I'm just watching this going, oh, movie, no. No, movie, no, please, don't do this. I felt embarrassed for everybody involved. It is embarrassing to watch all these people just going through all these romantic cliches in such this big fashion. Every emotion is big and broad and sad and dour and, oh, this is the end of the world every moment, which I guess teenagers are going to love. You know, it's kind of that's their vibe, really. So maybe they'll love it.
But it's set in the 90s, so they'll be not...
No, it's in modern... I'm saying it's 90s style.
Oh.
It's very throwback, because there's nothing really modern about it. It's the 90s had a very particular brand of, that kind of emo teen romance, and that's kind of what this is.
I do like the idea of fanfic getting more pub, though. That means there's always a chance.
There's always a chance for your He-Man.
Maybe. At least for a prequel or something, a spin-off movie.
This He-Man with little tiny arms.
Oh, you're ripping my Sam Claflin pick again? They went to... If you think that he's pretty weak, the guy that they're actually looking at for He-Man, a lot weaker than that dude. So, as soon as it happens, if it does, I was even shocked by it. So.
Not an emo He-Man. How about that? That'd be great.
Well, the cut, it's already there for you, right?
Turn it black and put little colors on the tips.
Oh.
There's a rabbit hole we won't go down.
Oh, did I mention that the romance all comes down to a wager? Yeah.
Don't they all?
He made a bet, because he believed that love was just a transaction and it wasn't real. And so he made a wager that he could make her fall in love with him. But then, spoiler alert, he fell in love with her. But then she found out that he made the bet and he broke her heart.
It was just a chemical romance the whole time.
It's so bad. It's so bad. It's just so terrible. This weekend sucks so much.
Missing Link.
All right, it doesn't suck that bad. Missing Link is Hugh Jackman and Zach Galifianakis. The story of an adventurer named Frost who goes looking for the missing link. He finds him. Turns out the missing link contacted him and wants to go to India and try and find the lost tribe of the Yeti because he thinks that's his ancestors. And so they're going to go on this round-the-world journey to try and take him there. Along the way, there's this British adventure society that's trying to stop Frost from proving that the missing link or the Yeti exists and keep him out of their club because he's new rich as opposed to old rich. And so class warfare, solid animation. This is Leica. Leica's a good group. They do a lot of good work. And yeah, this is really solid, family-friendly stuff. Zach Galifianakis is really funny as the missing link. He brings him this very kind of anxious, nerdy quality to it that's really, really sweet and endearing and earnest. And Hugh Jackman is playing it up, really broad and hammy and just really fantastic. And yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot.
It's the one that I would have seen as well, and they've done a pretty good job with everything that I've seen of theirs. It just makes me wonder, how does a film like this, with a group that seemed to be kind of growing in popularity a little bit, like they've now put their logo in front of trailers, for example. Why is this stuck kind of like in the dead of April? And they didn't promote it that well, that's for sure, because I forgot it existed until this week.
The box office seems to reflect that.
Yeah.
It was I was going in order of success this week, and it was the highest reviewed or at least successful.
And I don't know, there's just such a void for pretty consistent good kids stuff. Mm-hmm. Why would they not want to promote something
and
like
it was in more theaters than all the other 3 movies.
That is weird. Yeah, I don't know what the marketing campaign on this was. I don't think most people have heard of this movie.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And you couple that with, like, Hellboy was withheld from critics, as I understand it, right? Longer than usual, up till the day of release.
I wasn't paying close enough attention.
So it couldn't get, the bad buzz out before. Not like we didn't already kind of know that there was something like that going on there, but it's a little weird how people market things. They just drop it in the middle of nowhere, give it very little chance to succeed.
Well, Hellboy is a similar thing. Yeah, like the marketing campaign on that has been really. It started off really hot when 6 months ago, and then they just dropped off the face of the earth to the point where I looked up earlier this week and go, "Oh, Hellboy, that's coming out this week." I remembered Little, pretty well. They did a great job of making people remember Little, but yeah, I totally had no idea. And After is another weird marketing bit. They only marketed that apparently to the people who read the fan fiction.
Yeah, I've never even heard of After until today, and I mean,
the only Selma Blair is the only and Peter Gallagher, I guess, but Peter Gallagher is not that well known. But
Selma Blair is competing against Hellboy.
Yeah,
I've never seen the other ones, so I don't know.
What did you think of those two? Did you? The other Hellboys? You didn't see it?
I agree with your assessment that they're lower tier for Del Toro. Kind of like Mimic and Hellboy are next to each other, and then you can go above, and there's Pan's Labyrinth and Shape of Water. Kronos would be up there as well.
But I mean, those movies have been reviewed very highly, so I wish we had someone who's more of a fan for Hellboy, so we could truly represent it. But I don't really have any interest in it.
Mm-hmm. It ranks like I always think when I think of it. I think for some reason I think of like the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Like it ranks in that range for me.
Well, okay. I only had to see that once, and it was a piece of shit. But that violated one of my little rules. You can't abbreviate a title of a film, and so they were marketing that one as LXG, and I just couldn't understand why.
T2.
Sorry, Dave.
He didn't hear me, so that's good.
T2? Is that what you said?
Yeah. They marketed it like that. In fact, one of the covers of the movies, one of the releases has a T2 on it.
Oh, okay. Sure. But then they would put the little...
when it's your movie.
No. I know where you're going with this. I just know that they put it like right under there too. They made people know what it was first before they introduced that secondary title. People would refer to it as T2 because it's a slightly longer one, but on the first posters it was Terminator 2 Judgment Day the first trailer.
What about AVP?
Man, I have no defense for those movies. I just know that I like watching things slither on screen. I'm easy.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is the main event for the linear, legitimate, and universally recognized Undisputed Classic.
For the next half an hour, we'll probably be talking about Cameron Crowe movies. We got 3 of them. 2 of them will be the classic. Where do you want to start?
Let's start. Let's go chronological order. I guess let's start with Singles. We'll come back around the 89 one, but you know what I mean. Singles, 1992. It's Cameron Crowe directing a Seattle movie and kind of really helping, other than Nirvana, bringing that Seattle thing to the pop culture in a way that many people hadn't experienced it. Everybody kind of seen Seattle from the outside with Nirvana and Pearl Jam beginning, and this takes us inside the clubs and the people and the scene, and the way he captures that with these amazing series of romantic scenes with this incredible cast. Kira Sedgwick and Campbell Scott are the leads, with Matt Dillon, Bridget Fonda, just this amazing group of people, and this really, say anything, births the Cameron Crowe style. This is him coming into full flower here. The little tiny touches, those little minor character moments where he stops down and has that little guitar moment, and you see a character reflecting on something, and the life in their eyes really comes to be. It's really just it's beautiful. I love this movie. I might have cried a couple times watching it again. I haven't watched it in about 4 or 5 years. I tend to pick it up every then and put it back down. But the soundtrack is just absolute perfection. And then you've got these wonderful characters. The Steve is this starry-eyed romantic who sees the girl in the bar and goes up to her with the worst line ever about I have 2 options. I can come up with an act, or I can just be myself and have no act at all. Well, I think having no act at all is your act. Such a great, just the exchange is just beautiful, and just the way that they play it. Campbell Scott and Kira Sedgwick, that immediate chemical reaction between the two of them is brilliant. Then just all these characters are just wonderfully put together. You've got Bridget Fonda and Matt Dillon. That the way that plays out, the build of that romance, her wanting him not wanting her finding herself, and then him wanting her back, is such a great arc, and it's so exceptionally well played. I love these characters. I love this story. I even love the awkward moments of this, the strange parts, the things that don't seem to fit. Jeremy Piven popping up for no reason, or Eric Stoltz is in there as well. There is these characters that sort of outsize and stand outside the story for a minute, but they're so brilliantly put in terms of the pace and in terms of the placement within the story. The comic beats, the intentional gags that they provide are great. I love this movie.
I like this movie. To me, Cameron Crowe has like 2 masterpieces, and then some okay movies, and then a couple misses. This and Say Anything are kind of on that level down from Jerry Maguire and Almost Famous for me. I still like it. I don't know. It's hard when maybe I shouldn't compare it to those 2 movies. Maybe that's the problem. But it's good. It's neat seeing basically 3 of the 4 bands there, Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, performing and whatnot. And I like the way, kind of like High Fidelity, where you capture that scene without really it being about the scene. Kind of the way High Fidelity captures the record store, what it's like to that whole environment without it being about that. I liked that part of it more than I liked the romance part of it. The romance part of it, what I did like about that is it was more real than like Say Anything. but it was, I don't know, it was just, I like it. This kind of begins and ends there.
I came to that particular scene later than most people. I think Pearl Jam had been out for a year before I started listening to it or whatnot, but I kind of enjoyed it right away, what I heard of it. And so this movie was kind of like a nostalgia piece in a way. It's like, oh, that song, oh, that song, oh, that song, over and over and over again, to the point where I didn't pay as much attention to the sub-stories that were going on and really just the ambience of the film. It's a very breezy watch, easy to watch. Sometimes when Cameron Crowe tries to do the awkward and it doesn't work as well, like in Aloha, for example, then you can really sense it. Here, it kind of, all of that awkwardness seemed to fit within the framework of the characters in the movie, so I was okay with all of that. I would agree with you in putting it on his second tier of films. It's not as good as Almost Famous to me. It's not as good as Jerry Maguire, but yeah, that's second tier. I would agree with that. I would have Say Anything just a little bit higher. We'll get to that, though.
I do like it better than Say Anything, but I like Say Anything as well. But
there was something that he said, and I didn't want to wait till Almost Famous to say this because it matters for this movie. I listened to the audio commentary for that one a long time ago, and I remember him saying the way that he wrote was like listening to what an imagined conversation would be between him and his friends and trying to project that onto characters. I thought that was a very interesting way of looking at writing. A lot of people that when they sit down and write, I'm sure are thinking to themselves, what would it be like for me? But for him, he just comes out and says it, and I can see it in his work. It always seems like, oh yeah, I can imagine Cameron Crowe being the lead in this particular conversation, or maybe he had this conversation with a girl when he was 24, or in Patrick Fuge's character in Almost Famous, you can imagine him in that for obvious reasons. I see that in Singles a lot. It seems like a more natural conversation, but from 1992. I wasn't quite old enough to understand romantic dynamics at age 13 when that came out. Well, one might argue that I still don't, but the point is I think I might be just a little too young to appreciate this as much because I have a different kind of nostalgia about it.
There's so much nostalgia for me on this movie. I mean, this was the movie of my high school years. This was the movie that in my mind, this is the person I wanted to be. It was the person who listened to this music and loved these characters and wanted to be these characters to the point where, I mean, for my entire life, because I didn't have Bogart's speech at the end of Casablanca. So for me, romance at that moment was I was nowhere near your neighborhood. That to me was the ultimate of what romance was, and that stayed with me for years.
That is amazing, though. In a lesser movie, You Complete Me, I Was Nowhere Near, the stupid boombox thing. Those do not work in a lot of movies because they are really, really cheesy. But for whatever reason, he makes them work in his movies, which I find pretty amazing.
That line right there that you're talking about, then also how Bridget Fonda's character arc winds up, where she first doesn't realize that, she's with a person that won't say Gesundheit after she sneezes, but then at the end, her character can see, oh, look at what Matt Dillon has done for himself. He's finally ready for that. So I'm with you on that one too. It pays off because the movie's good.
Well, and I think it's if he really cares about the environment that he's making the movie about, which he clearly does, and especially Singles, Almost Famous, Jerry Maguire, I don't know, because the environment's so, like Sean was saying, you just kind of like being there, you like the characters, you like everything about it, so then that stuff can sneak through. I mean, really, that Jerry Maguire line is as cheesy as it gets, and to the point where it's been made fun of, since then. But when you're watching the movie, you're caught up in it, and it actually works. Oh, yeah. So it's pretty impressive. What I like best about Singles is that, he comes from the 70s, and now he's in the 90s trying to, accurately describe the grunge era, and they really weren't any different than the guys before them. So but that was the whole thing about grunge when it came out, is they were trying to be different, or at least that was how MTV portrayed it, and maybe Kurt Cobain. But I liked that the best because it was just like, see, these guys are just as stupid and clueless as everybody else.
Watching it with my wife sitting there saying, it's Eddie Vedder. It's Jeff Alman. It's Chris Cornell. And he's like, who each time. And so
I was like, that's Jerry Cantrell. It's Lane Staley. Those are the guys I like the best.
Depending on how you look at it, of course. Yeah, I won't argue with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's 4 bands. Go ahead.
What else is great about this is, and stylistically, when it comes to Crow, is that he's a rare director who can do gags in the movie, and they work. Gags like the references to Xavier McDaniel in the movie. Hilarious. That is funny stuff, but also meaningful later on. He takes a joke and then makes it mean something later. That is just wonderfully detailed writing and direction. But you have all these other little bits of business that are in this movie that are just brilliant. Like they shouldn't work because they're such obviously gags, and yet they're funny, and they don't stop the movie. They don't stop the pace. They don't stop the romance of it. It fits. Every little bit of that fits.
And when I call it a second tier Cameron Crowe movie, I mean, Almost Famous is practically my favorite movie of all time. So I mean, that's it's hard to get. And Jerry Maguire is right up there with it. 10, 15, 20 movies behind it. But so I don't really want to tear this movie down by saying that. It's such a high bar when he's on that it's still very good. And I mean, if you lived in the 90s at all, you should see it.
Yeah, it smelled like 1992 and 93. That entire 2-year era there.
I have absolutely no emotional separation from this movie. It's so there. The first date I had in high school was just me sitting by a phone listening to Paul Westerberg over and over and over again, waiting for the phone to ring, just over and over again. Dyslexic heart. So I've got no emotional distance from this movie whatsoever.
And I probably saw it. I mean, you didn't see it right away either, right?
What's that?
You didn't singles. You didn't see.
No, this is the first time that I've seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. And I noticed that the music was by Paul Westerberg, and I mean that's another person that I recognize.
I'd say I was a junior in high school, so.
And I was maybe 30 when I saw it, so there's that. Almost Famous.
Almost Famous, yes. This is Cameron Crowe's most personal movie, based off of his own life as a writer for Rolling Stone. He actually did get his start at the age of 15 writing about bands, and he did hang out with Lester Bangs and kind of was mentored by him getting into the business, and this is that story. His mom allowing him out into the world to take part in this incredible moment in rock and roll in the early 1970s. The character of William Miller is going to go out on the road with the band Stillwater, with everything taken care of by Rolling Stone, and he's going to write a story, and along the way he's going to grow up a lot. He's going to meet a girl, Penny Lane, Kate Hudson, in her Academy Award-nominated performance. Should have won. She's amazing. Yeah, it's a coming-of-age story. It's a rock and roll story. It's perfect.
You mind if I go next, and then I'd like you to round it out, being that it's your top dog. I find that there are just a few characters in this that could make the movie on its own. After watching this again, I watched the theatrical version just to remind me of what it was like the first time, but there's not a single thing wrong with this movie. I was trying really hard to think, well, maybe that could have gone this way. I might have wanted this to linger a little. No, every single scene is filmed so well, costume-wise, sound-wise, like everything that you would have expected rock and roll to be. And I'm not cool, okay? As the movie likes to point out, who is and who is not cool. I'm not cool. I felt cool watching this one. And Frances McDormand's character, William's mom, is one of my favorite performances of all time. And I had the debate in my head, how did Marcia Gay Harden win for Pollock over Kate Hudson? Well, is it possible that Frances McDormand and Kate Hudson just like split the vote with voters?
Had to be.
Because they were both nominated in the same category.
And the movie wasn't even nominated.
No,
so.
and that is such a travesty. Gladiator is fine. I love Gladiator for some reason. But it has no business being nominated and or winning over Almost Famous. Not just the mom character, who some of my parenting tries to come from her too, isn't inspired by her. This like cautious bravery that she has, where I know she knows what she's doing, but she's like feels so awful about it. I feel very similar most of the time. Kate Hudson as Penny Lane. There's the scene in which she's been told about what Billy Crudup's character thinks of her. She does one of those things that was echoed later. I saw it in Emma Stone's Birdman performance, where she does an entire scene with just her face, and you see her go from one extreme to another extreme, and with the most graceful precision you could possibly imagine. I really think that Penny Lane is one of the best screen characters of all time. I'm not. This is not breaking news by any means. Obviously, a lot of people would agree that at least she's in the conversation. But I would just declare I think this is some of the best performances of all time, one of the best scripts of all time, soundtrack wise. I don't know what's wrong with it.
I cannot keep from get almost like genuine tears from that moment when she says, "What kind of beer?" That look on her face, that tear in her eye, man, it's fucking beautiful.
Whew. And the crazy thing too is if you had, shined the camera on Fairuza Balk's character more, or Anna Paquin's, or Zooey Deschanel, they would be just as good as Kate Hudson, because they're doing just as good acting, but they're in the peripheral.
Yeah.
And you just don't get movies that do that a lot.
The exceptional detail of every single character. There is so much life in every one of them, and he doesn't even have to linger on it. He's given them such inner life in just a couple of moments.
Yeah, it probably, here's the reason Rocky's my favorite movie is, I grew up with Rocky IV, and so it's almost an anti-nostalgia with Rocky, where the nostalgia plays against it, and it's still somehow, like, I don't know, it just shocked me when I watch it again. I keep forgetting how good it is, and then I watch it. I'm like, that's really, I'm justified in feeling this way. Almost Famous is just, like, meant for me, and it's the perfect movie, and, even watching the Untitled version, I don't care that those unnecessary scenes. It's just fun to be there. That whole radio with Kyle Gass does not need to be in the movie, but it's so much fun.
Oh, yeah.
The extended time in the ice room, where they're going to get ice, not necessary, but I just like being in the world more.
That little backstage moment between Billy Crudup and William, right before the first time he's going to go on stage in front of him, and he stops him and he starts talking about Marvin Gaye. That's the greatest scene to never end up in a movie.
Now, the scene at the end, I can't remember because I've been watching Untitled for so long. When he has the, what do you want? You got the hand that's a fist, and it's Jimmy Fallon's character. Yeah. Which one do you want, the mystery or the whatever? I don't even remember what he had in his hand. Is that in the movie?
Lighter. No, it's not.
It's a lighter, that's right. That, because I get to interview musicians a lot, and that's one of the things that I'm always asking about, because like today, every rock star is on social media. You get to see what they eat for dinner. There's no mystery at all. But back then, Jimmy Page must have worshipped the devil, but no one really knows. And so, you have this mystery versus access. Both are kind of neat. The last guy I interviewed, he goes, "Mysteries for assholes." Those are the guys that are destroying hotel rooms and throwing TVs out the window and breaking cars. And so it just kind of, and then watching this movie, the whole time, they're assholes. And then they come to that realization at the end. I don't know. It was just, I love watching this movie.
I can't. I love every second of it. The backstage fight over the T-shirt is so real. I'm just one of the out of focus guys. How amazing is Jason Lee in this movie?
And you know who they're really based on? It's Page and Plant.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, when Robert Plant saw it, he said, "Yeah, he reminds me of Jimmy Page a lot." Because that was the theory: is Jimmy Page was the musically past all of them, but he can't leave because they've gotten so popular. But
oh man, and that beat at the end with Tangerine, that is fucking perfect, isn't it? That is just, oh man.
Well, all the Rain song, all the song. I mean, who puts a Rain song in a movie? That's crazy.
I mean, and even Tiny Dancer,
That's the best part of the movie.
It is so great. I mean, people have talked about it for years. You can talk about it for days. It's still an amazing scene.
And I didn't know that song before this movie. There's Elton John has so many hits. I'm sure I'd heard it, but I'd never really listened to it. And that's kind of this is the movie that really turned me on to that song.
I knew the Time Life version of that song where they're playing Elton John's greatest hits or best hits of the 70s or something, and you hear just the chorus clip. I didn't realize as it was playing the first time I saw it, oh, this is the song with that in it spread out. I'm with you. It's the first time that I had heard it. I had heard all, of course, 80s and 90s Elton John stuff. No surprise there.
Yeah, it was to the point where that's the song we danced to at my wedding. Reason being is I'm a big Aerosmith fan. Yeah. I did not want to do the Armageddon song. I fought. Because that was also the year we got together when that song came out. And I was just like, what about this one? And I didn't really think about Tiny Dancer being 8 minutes long.
Radio at its 5:37.
Okay. Still, 5 minutes is a long time.
That scene shouldn't work. It shouldn't. I mean, it shouldn't work, but it does. It's Cameron Crowe. It works. The minute he steps on the bus to the end of that moment is just, it's utter perfection.
Well, the fights are so real. The friendships. I mean, even the mother and daughter. You could argue that it's not consistent. She's pissed off. She wants to run away. And the next thing they're in the car laughing. Well, that's what happens when you have that kind of relationship, when you're that close. Jeff Beebe and, oh my God, why can't I remember
Russell Hammond?
Russell Hammond. Their relationship is they're going to have days where they hate each other and days where they're the best of friends. And this movie captures that better than anything else. And while watching it, it also made me, like Lords of Chaos. I don't know why I thought of Lords of Chaos while watching this, but there's that where in this it's more you're dealing with the facade of being famous and trying to be famous, and that was you're dealing with the scene and trying to be what's real and what's not. And both these movies captured that kind of thing perfectly. I don't know. If you haven't seen Almost Famous, I don't care if you're an emo person. Go see Almost Famous.
Which version would you start them out with, honestly, both of you? I mean...
Theatrical. I mean, I love Untitled, and I think Untitled's amazing, but I mean, there are things that can, slow down the pacing a little bit on Untitled, so for people to get into it, I would say the theatrical first.
I wouldn't disagree with that.
I love those cutscenes, don't get me wrong, they're great. Especially the radio scene is wonderful, but in terms of pacing and keeping people involved, the theatricals.
The only thing I don't like about the movie, and it just popped in my head, is the whole Mick Jagger bit that Jimmy Fallon
does stand out a little bit.
And it stood out in 2000 when I saw it too. That was the only thing. It was just I
was glad though it was much shorter in the actual watching it than it is in your mind.
Right. Because I don't know, yeah.
But it does though underline the soullessness of that character and what he represents, and so it does play into the overall theme of the movie as well.
No, I agree with that. It's just
what it just occurred to me is we've gotten this far and we haven't talked about Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Best role he's ever done.
I mean, I just want to cry that he's dead. I mean, it's just the single most he embodies this character so brilliantly. And every line of dialogue is so meaningful or hilarious and charismatic. My God, he just oozes you can't take your eyes off of him. He's magnetic.
Yeah, he's a total idiot and a genius all at the same time. It's just kind of amazing how they capture all that, and really in all the characters, but more in him than anybody else.
He reminds me, it's a more polished performance of Jack Black's character in High Fidelity, where he has all of that knowledge, but he's kind of an oaf and would toss music around or whatever, even that isn't his, just because he's trying to get to a point, man. A wiser version of Jack Black's character.
But even as, like, he shares his opinion as if it's fact, and it's just kind of funny. But then he backtracks a little bit whenever he does it too. He never commits all the way. I don't know. It's just a lot, especially when he's in the radio station picking up. I mean, that's I do enjoy that extended scene a little bit because I'm with him. I'll take the Guess Who over the Doors any day of the week. I like the Doors too, but he's right.
They have the courage to be drunken buffoons, and that makes them poetic. Oh, that's so great. And then the uncool speech, I mean, that just hits right at your heart. It does.
Anything else?
I think we've covered all of our personal favorite films now on the show at length.
Since this is Aunt Bethany's 80th Christmas, I think she should lead us in the saying of grace.
What, dear? Grace! Grace! She passed away 30 years ago.
1989.
Sticking with Cameron Crowe, and the reason for our classic choices this week, Say Anything turns 30, and I clearly am going to be the biggest fan of this movie on the show today, I think.
I'll give you a run.
Run for my money, okay. The reasons that I adore this movie, it's the subplot involving John Mahoney's character is a bit overwrought, like... it's not the main focus, at least it shouldn't be, but it helps all of these characters wrap up where they're going. Okay, fine. What I do like is the interaction with John Mahoney's character and Ione Skye. They have such a connection that is something I hadn't seen in TV or film before, and it seemed more real, like the kind of connection you might want to have as a parent. At least for me, I like this idea of the parent that I wouldn't go as far as him in developing that kind of closeness, because he even says in the movie, "I'm your friend." Well, okay, hold on a second. But what I like is how she's not afraid to tell him anything, okay? And even if it's uncomfortable, I believe those two characters and their dynamic, okay? And then John Cusack's Lloyd Dobler versus Ione Skye. God, I'm going to forget. Freaking thank you. Good God. I should know my fictional ladies of the 80s.
Sean's a bigger fan.
Undoubtedly. I think this is probably the 5th or 6th time I've seen it. Saw it for the first time in 2001 or 2002. So it hasn't been like a lifelong thing with this. But I knew about the boombox scene. I knew about the song. But what I just love the interactions, the interpersonal moments between Cusack and Skye. Like, maybe it's too perfect for people. Maybe she's too much of what some would consider later to be a manic pixie dream girl that helps him figure things out. But I think this is more her story than Lloyd Dobler's, to be honest. She's the one that we care about the most. It's a good thing that they end up working it out in a way. But I was interested in their journey. In fact, I had the reflection seeing it this time. I wish there was a bit more of them and a little bit less of John Mahoney in this movie. If I were to take a couple scenes out, I would, involving him. And I might put a scene in there where they talk about their future and what they really want. They did at the table, but they felt the pressure of the adults around them. I would have wanted to see more with them. Overall, though, I love the music in this movie. I love the dialogue. I love the characters. Gee, it's a broken record. But Say Anything is wonderful to me. Even with the song, if you do or don't like it, Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes song. I think it matters in this movie the same way that other songs matter in other movies. It kind of ties up loose ends. You introduce it in a point here, and then you bring it back later. Similar to what we talked about with those other two movies. It matters when they introduced it. I do love this one. I can't believe that it's 30 because I've now had a crush on Ione Skye for 17 years.
I just watched a TV show with her in it.
Oh, really?
Called Camping on HBO. She's naked in it, too.
I know nothing.
It doesn't matter.
I thought she quit acting, honestly.
No, it's her, Juliette Lewis and Jennifer Garner are all in it.
Oh, wow. Huh.
I don't know. I liked it. It was a pretty fun show.
She started to look a lot differently after Say Anything. And it came around because I watched Wayne's World last year, and she's in Wayne's World in a scene, and I just realized last year that's her. I'm like,
that's what happened to me. I actually went to IMDb with her name because she looked familiar, but I couldn't remember who she was. And I'm like, oh, she was Jennifer Garner's sister in Camping.
Say Anything. I love Cusack in this movie. He's just classically Cusack here. Lloyd Dobler is as much as he's Cameron Crowe's creation, he's as much Cusack's creation. As much as, you look at Almost Famous, and I love those characters and those performances, but you can sense the Cameron Crowe, and same goes for Singles, and even to a point Jerry Maguire, although Cruise does make Jerry his own a little bit. I think Cusack stands apart from Cameron Crowe more than any other actor does. He stands out as more of a John Cusack kind of character, and perhaps this just is him creating the archetype that would go forward in his career. But I think that the way that Lloyd Dobler stands apart as his and Cameron's creation, it makes it so much more unique, and that's what really stands out to me about this movie is the way that stands apart and works. It works so well together. Lloyd Dobler is so unique and different and weird, and he's awkward and interesting, and he's just a genuinely good person who just wants to be with this girl, and it's really the only thing he knows about himself is that he likes this girl. And I mean, as a 13-year-old, I was just kind of like fascinated by that makes sense to me. And he makes sense. It made sense to me at the time, and I get it. Looking back on it now, it makes sense to me that somebody would have that sort of weird single-mindedness, especially a character like him. He just makes it so indelible. He makes it so believable that would be the one thing in his life that makes sense to him.
My biggest problem in it, this movie has nothing really to do with the movie other than it ends when it ends, and that's how I should leave it. But I can't help but fast forward 5 to 10 years when they're not together. Because there's no way they'd stay together. But the movie's not asking me to do that. I'm doing that on my own.
That's it's cool that you said that, because with the ellipses that follow the official title of this movie, I thought to myself, it would be interesting if 30 years later we had a sequel that started with an ellipses, Say Everything, or even something cheesy like that, but where we see where these characters are in a number of years. Did it work out? Didn't it? Similar to the way that the Before series does. That's obviously more of a dramatic, play type setting, the way that those films are set up. But I like the thought of these characters progressing to a certain point, and I thought that they would work out no matter what, because he's so chill to the point where he calmed Jeremy Piven on coke down.
I don't want to argue the future that what didn't happen, but ultimately he's going to hold her back. It's unless she wants to be held back, which
not every man that's with a genius holds them back.
But he offers nothing other than
I love you, honey.
Oh, I was.
You don't have to kick me out. There's a lot of bedrooms, man. I can just stay in another.
If they made something called Say Everything and they were together, I would hate it. I don't care. I don't care if Kevin Smith directed it. I would not. There's no way I could like that movie.
That fanfic won't get off the ground. No problem.
I love the party sequence in this movie where Lloyd walks in and he gets stuck with the keys, and he's got to do everybody's keys, and then he's away from her, and she's off, meeting people for the first time, and we get it's such a great way to introduce her as a character and build her as a character, as much as her speech at graduation kind of gives you a sense of how disconnected she is from the rest of the school. The party scene really gives you further. It brings her into the idea of just how disconnected she's been from these last 4 years of her life. And to disconnect her from him in that moment where you expect them to be together the whole night, that is really a great way to play that scene and a great way to develop these characters apart from each other so we get a sense of who they are and why they're going to be together. It's simple, but it's exceptionally smart writing. On top of that, then, of course, during that scene, you get just Lily Taylor at her just absolutely most brilliant singing about Joe.
The prequel to her High Fidelity character, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Seriously, if you just take this movie and transfer it to High Fidelity, it kind of works in a way. The one more thing that I'll say about them working out, and this is why I would believe it a little bit more, she is disconnected. He offers her the connection, the pathway to feeling connected that she hasn't had before, kind of like a feeling of home, belonging, where that's a much stronger foundation than a lot of other film characters that we're introduced to, okay? And what he's doing by separating from her in that scene, he's putting her first. He's trying to say, like, well, yeah, I want to spend time with her, but what would be best for her? That's actual character development, character growth, interesting stuff that we don't often see, or if nothing else, it's played for a typical situation like She's All That or something. It's usually cheap, and in this case, it's not.
I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because I didn't get that sense of that scene. I thought he wanted to be where she was, but he felt the obligation of doing what he had to do with the keys, and awkwardly was like not sure what to do for her and to invade. He didn't know what to do in that moment. I'm
taking the context of the rest of the film in mind, where he's willing to go with her to London. He's willing to step aside even if it hurts, and he does. He's trying the best that he can, because the only way that it'll work is if he
I can see that for the rest of the movie. I can't see it in
that scene. Okay, I may have interpreted that wrong, but I like my interpretation. It fits my opinion better.
I mean, I need to justify why they're not going to stay together. When everything happens, I mean, there's a lot of drama going on. Her dad's now in jail. There's a lot of things that happen that kind of bring them back together. So, I don't know, just as you start to move on and you realize the person you're with really isn't doing much for you other than, hey, I'm putting you first, but I got nothing else to offer you. Unless that's what you want. Again, I don't think you're doing that, Josh. So
no. I am listening as much as I usually can, which is half.
But also, your opinion is also kind of shaped by just societal experience, because, I mean, people who get together at the age of 18 tend not to. It is a very anomalous notion to be with somebody
as a person who's married to the person that they met at 18. Yeah. So I've. But I was definitely not him. And she was definitely not her. I mean, I don't know. There's just sometimes when it's that heightened, that's usually when it doesn't work.
I'm very familiar.
But this movie's not asking you to look 5 years in the future. No. It's trying to tell that story of that moment. And it's
very specifically to these two
so
characters.
There's really no reason for me to do this.
Counterpoint. That's good. I really wish that I could get a couple of female friends that I have that introduced me to this movie. In fact, I watched it with them and my other good friend, who's now her husband. That was such a cool, formative moment. Like, how did I miss this all this time? They're so into that, and for one of my notes, their favorite movie. I would like to ask, like, how does this film make you feel? I feel in a way like, obviously you're going to identify with it more because it was in your wheelhouse at that particular time. I saw it late, and I love it because I love the Cameron Crowe style. You're looking at that.
Well, and I also hate John Cusack. So
right.
And I mean, it's more tolerable here in a movie like High Fidelity when you have, someone who cares about the movie. But at the same time, I'm also having to somewhat put up with it.
Oh, of course. He's only one of my favorites of all time. Person I personally identify with, so it's like you're saying that you hate me, too. I never make that kind of connection, though, so you're lucky. Oh, yeah. Also, hey, in 89, we've got some other crap that came out. And by crap, I really mean crap. The one that I have seen already and refuse to watch again. I saw it in the theater for whatever reason. My parents decided this was a good idea. She's Out of Control. I suppose because we were in the thick of our Who's the Boss frenzy at home. Tony Danza was on our mind. But this film stars him and Catherine Hicks, and Amy Dolenz plays his daughter. And oh, gosh, this is the director of Mr. Mom, Stan Dragotti, if I'm not mistaken. And what it does, though, is it makes it seem like there's this unstoppable force within his daughter that he must contain because she's absolutely on the prowl for every single sexual situation that exists. And if he doesn't stop her as the man, then it's going to be a problem.
This movie is
it's
so
that
creepy.
Overt and creepy, at least by my memory. And I'm talking about I was 10 or so.
The way that the director, and I feel bad, honestly, for Tony Danza, the way the director films her and fetishizes her throughout this movie through his eyes. He thinks that she is like he's trying to fight the idea that he wants to have sex with her. Like, that's the way the director portrays it. It's like he's making it seem that, like, Tony Danza wants to have sex with his own daughter. It's how that level of weird fetishizing direction that is so bizarre and off-putting as an adult. You don't notice it as a kid, because if you're me, your eyes are popped so far out of your head by Amy Dolenz, her in that bathing suit, running out of the water onto the beach. That's how I came to be a man in that moment.
Potato chips. And Surge wasn't there yet, so what was your go-to? Mellow Yellow? Call back to another week.
It's so many people going, really? Potato chips?
What you want to do is set the stage for how much shame is actually involved in that scene. So saying potato chips is just like the bare minimum.
And cake would make it weird.
Ice cream really makes it weird. But that's another story. We've already named one podcast about it.
What else?
Oh, yeah, there's more shit.
I mean, I can read them off if you want.
Oh, and The Edge of Sanity is a Jekyll and Hyde B-movie made with Anthony Perkins in the lead. It's not available to watch if you want to go on Amazon and try and rent it anyways, which I didn't want to.
But it's just another Anthony with Perkins playing, he's playing Psycho again.
Yeah. Right. A number of countless in-house Norman Bates performances and out-of-house. Also a movie called Disorganized Crime. I thought that this might end up being a comedy when I looked it up because it's got Corbin Burnson in it. I was just off the Major League comedy thought. And actually, no, it doesn't really have anything to do with comedy.
No,
it's a hilarious title.
Yeah, that's what threw me off.
Because it's organized crime generally, but this time, disorganized. I get it.
Oof. Okay, so there's also the last film of the week. Gosh, where'd it go?
Winter People.
Winter People. This is the other one that I tried to watch, but decided that it sounded so damn boring that I wasn't going to get into it. Even though it's Kurt Russell, which I usually try and watch the things that he's in. Because as a podcast, we generally like him, even if it's kind of like with one hand tied behind our backs.
But when you know a lot of Kurt Russell's work in a movie that you've never heard of, happens to have him in it, there's probably a reason you've never heard of it.
Yeah.
Probably. And this one did make over $1 million, but it has such a long, drawn-out... It's a period piece, and the explanation for it, for the synopsis, is drawn out, and it didn't look interesting at all. And I'm like, oh, do I really want to pay $3 for this?
Did it say if Kurt Russell was playing Clint Eastwood, John Wayne, or Kurt Russell?
His character is like a real old-timey type name. It starts with a W, like Wayman or something like that. So.
John Wayne, okay.
Now I see where you're going with that. Yep.
But that's all our 89 movies, I believe.
It is. There's a better week next week. Get excited, everyone.
Yeah.
Best baseball film ever
next week. Breakthrough in Penguins. It's going to be a great week. Field of Dreams does turn 30.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
So our classic is The Stratton Story, I believe. We set on. That's on Amazon.
Jimmy Stewart.
He has
had a lot of success with Jimmy Stewart on the show, so...
When are we going to bring It's a Wonderful Life to the show?
The least of Jimmy Stewart.
Yeah, probably.
But no, it'll be. I mean, you get one of the better baseball movies, and probably Kevin Costner's second best baseball movie of all time. And,
yes.
I mean, a distant second.
I don't think I can approach the review with anything objective, you know? Wait, subjective? I'm always confused by that shit. The one that's the truth. Like, I can't prove, that Field of Dreams is better, but it just is.
Not enough baseball, too much corn.
Multiple meanings in corn.
Not intentionally. But before we let you go, I do want to thank our Patreon supporters, and we'll start at the key grip level with the Hall of Famer Jason Bryant and Charlie Messing. Our character actor level, Christina Cato, Cousin Jeff, and Josh Paul.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
Our special effects level, and Corey from Ivy Envy and Sarah Morrell.
May the Force be with you.
Our associate producer, Jason Mollett.
Everybody has to eat shaving cream once in a while.
And our movie stars, Uncle Jeff and Dave Sievers.
I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
If you want to be a Patreon supporter, head over to ihatecritics.net/Patreon to get yourself a credit on the show. There's also the PayPal link if you want to do that instead. Then we have our merch at ihatecritics.net. If you click on the podcast merch, if you do buy something, please take a picture of it and share it with us, and we'll retweet it or whatever else you do on social media.
Insta.
Okay, I don't.
Is that how you say it? Like, instead of a tweet, I sent out an Instagram. Oh, so you have to say the full thing. I'm not up on the hip lingo.
Can you re-Instagram
I have no
things?
idea.
I don't know. I see people do it, but I can't figure out how to. I mean, I guess I haven't really tried.
I'm still stuck on trying to figure out how to put two pictures into one post, so...
I think you need like a separate app to do that.
Oh,
well,
okay.
Maybe not. I don't do it enough to know, so forgive me. Anyway, that's our show. We'll see you next week.
Ladies and gentlemen, the evening is over. We hope you all enjoyed yourselves, and we'll see you all again in 1974. Good evening!
That ought to do it. Thanks very much, Ray.
And we're the three best friends that anybody could have. We're the three best friends that anyone could have. We're the three best friends that anyone can have. And we'll never, ever, 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 ever leave each other. We're the best three friends that anybody could have. I mean, the three best friends that anybody could have. That's right, the three best friends.
Beethoven or Tombstone?
Tombstone.
Man on Fire. Scrooged. Moon. The Scorpion King. Moon.
Yeah, we'll just take care of that one.
I'm not going to give you time to badmouth that movie. The Mighty Ducks or the Birdcage?
Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, me too.
The Incredibles or Clue?
Incredibles.
But Clue's another find of the show for me.
Some Like It Hot, Red Dragon.
Some Like It Hot.
Agreed.
Eddie Murphy, Delirious. Let's not do that one. Planet of the Apes, 1968, L.A. Confidential.
Ooh. L.A. Confidential.
Agreed.
Planet of the Apes is a landmark, but L.A. Confidential is L.A. Confidential.
That made the final three when I was picking the classic for a couple weeks from now, by the way. It was L.A. Confidential. And then I'm like, it's superhero week. I got to focus on the comics. Anyways.
The Passion of the Christ or The Mummy? Kind of one and the same.
The Mummy.
I'll go with The Passion of the Christ. Easter is right around the corner.
And you like blood and guts.
Right.
Zombie Jesus.
E.T. or Minority Report?
Minority Report.
E.T.
Go E.T. as
All
well.
right.
Matilda, the Evil Dead.
Evil Dead.
You can say it. Say Matilda.
I haven't
It's
seen Matilda.
1981.
But, yeah. The Fishing with Gandhi.
Okay. I'm curious how this one's going to play out. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. Anchorman: The Legend of Ron Burgundy.
It's Star Wars for me. I like it. I love Anchorman, but it's tired for me. I would watch Force Awakens first.
Oh, God.
You can do it.
This is akin to you being concerned about Easter and Passion of the Christ. As celebration is going on in Chicago, I'm about to say Anchorman. So it's just literally that much higher on the list.
No, I'm with you. The Force Awakens is just, might as well be called Star Wars: The Fan Service.
It worked.
Right. Blade Runner: Atonement.
Blade Runner.
Blade Runner. You know, they have a whole, there's a playlist on Spotify. Sorry to get off the point here. There's a playlist on Spotify you can go to, and it's Blade Runner music as, ambient night music. White noise. It's really cool. Anyways, go on.
City Slickers: Casino.
Casino? Kind of. I really hate City Slickers.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Casino. We managed to get through most of Scorsese's remaining filmography that we hadn't talked about, except for that
lately
one.
About us doing Scorsese movies and me finding flaws with them. I could find flaws in Casino all day.
Oh yeah,
just a longer version of all the flaws.
I think when we do Star Wars, the Skywalker thing, whatever it's called, we should make Casino the classic in the event he wants to come back for that.
Okay. I see. So if it's going to be one for me, it's got to be one for you guys as well. I understand.
Unless it's going to not make him come back, and then maybe I'll just change my mind.
The only concern that I have about the Star Wars movie is that once again, I'm going to have to listen as you say, haha, I've seen it already.
The bucket list: Castaway.
Castaway.
Four Weddings and a Funeral. Robert De Niro's Cape Fear.
Four Weddings and a Funeral.
Agreed.
I think I'll go with Cape Fear over that one. Weird Science: Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Beverly Hills Cop 2, huh? Let's yeah, I mean, if it was original Beverly Hills Cop, I'd definitely say yes. It's a little closer with this one. Kind of want to pick Weird Science.
I'm going to go Beverly Hills Cop 2. As it turns out, Weird Science was a lot weirder and grosser than I remembered it being, and Beverly Hills Cop 2 was better than I remember as soon as I threw away all expectations and knew that it was a Tony Scott movie.
Beverly Hills Cop 2 for me. The Road Warrior: The Fox and the Hound.
Fox and the Hound.
Fox and the Hound.
Top Gun: Transformers.
Top Gun.
Speaking of Tony Scott.
American Gangster: The Chronicles of Narnia, Prince Caspian.
American Gangster.
Luckily, haven't seen either of them.
Battle of Los Angeles: Natural Born Killers.
Fishing with Gandhi.
Well, that's what happens when I don't save. Natural Born Killers.
I agree. Get Shorty or Step Brothers.
Get Shorty.
Get Shorty.
Sing Street: Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Sing Street.
Sing Street.
Weird Science: Alien.
All right, we're up to date on his current opinion of Weird Science. I've got the popcorn bowl. I'm just waiting.
I don't know where to go on that. Yeah,
So Beverly Hills 1 is better than Alien? Would you take?
Oh, definitely, yeah.
I would expect that.
I'm going Alien.
I'll choose Alien.
Yeah, that's fine. I won't say anything.
I normally don't. Bound: Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction. Oh, the Pulp Fiction connection with Say Anything. Eric Stoltz as the guy that lives at that house, and the attire that he had on, that's a natural progression to his Pulp Fiction character 5 years later.
Mortal Kombat, Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11.
Ocean's 11.
Zombieland, the big red one. I've never seen the big red one.
You can go ahead and skip it.
Yeah, I haven't seen it either. Mark Hamill's in that one, though.
Zombieland or The Mist?
Zombieland.
The Mist.
That is hard for me. I think I like Zombieland more. I do like The Mist a lot, though. Rosemary's Baby, Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Back to the Future.
Did you see? I saw this, by the way, and it's a complete tangent, but somebody posted a VHS cover, a back cover of Teen Wolf, and there's a quote from a critic on the back that says, Michael J. Fox is better than in Back to the Future. On the back of the Teen Wolf VHS. An actual critic's pull quote, taking a shot at Back to the Future. Why? First of all, why would you do that? Second of all, why is that the pull quote?
They had to dig really deep, and somebody got paid. I don't know.
What a bizarre hot take to have.
I've just been refreshing some good ones I probably shouldn't have, and now I'm getting really a bunch of shit. All right, big Die Hard.
Oh boy, Die Hard.
Die Hard.
It's big for me, but I'm not going to fight that hard for it. Billy Elliot, The Man from Snowy River.
No, I think that's a TV movie.
Yeah, something like that. I want to say Wilford Brimley or something.
Bret Hart's in it.
The Other Guys. The Eye.
The Other Guys.
The Other Guys.
Beverly Hills Cop, First Blood.
Beverly Hills Cop.
Agreed.
A lot more fun. The Dark Crystal, Austin Powers, and Goldmember.
I guess I'm not a big fan of Dark Crystal, so I'll go Austin Powers in the least funny version.
I'll take the Dark Crystal. Allegiance to Jim Henson, I guess.
I guess I will too. Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, The Last of the Mohicans.
I mean, I know Last of the Mohicans is a good movie. I never want to see it again, so I'm going to go with Harry Potter.
Yeah, that's the best film of all of the films.
I've never seen Last of the Mohicans.
Good soundtrack. Very pretty to look at.
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, Thelma and Louise.
Thelma and Louise.
Agreed.
Although I have a real soft spot for Halloween 3.
I know.
It's a movie to laugh at.
Conan the Barbarian, Superman, 78.
Conan? I've really come to hate Superman a lot.
I'll take Superman.
As will I. All right, we can be done. Sick of waiting for the one to lead the show on.